everyone, and welcome back to the Cabral Concept. I'm Stephen Cabral, board-certified naturopathic doctor. Looking forward to today's Training Thursday show, where we're going to chat about the 5 signs that your low-carb or keto diet may not be working for you and could actually be hurting your internal mechanisms, your internal physiology, leading to long-term consequences. So, I know that most diets nowadays like to talk about all of the different benefits of a keto or low-carb diet, and there are a lot. It does help with weight loss for certain types of people. It helps balance out blood sugar. If you do have cancer, not to prevent it, but if you do have cancer, some type of tumorous-based growths, rheumatoid arthritis. So there are some diets or some versions of the keto-based diet, which, again, can vary in terms of your carbohydrate intake and the foods that you're eating. And there are a lot of benefits to it. And we use it partially in my own practice. For the first 21 days, we get someone on a body transformation-based protocol. Again, not to get them into ketosis. It may happen, but to put them on a lower carbohydrate diet. And again, you probably heard me talk about this many times before on the Cabral Concept. If not, please do tune in, check back on those shows by going to stephencabral.com/podcast, and we'll try to link up some of them in the show notes today. Today's show specifically is 552. So you can just go to stephencabral.com/552, and you will get your show notes right there. So let's get into it, though. Looking forward to bringing this to you, and here's why. Everyone, when any new fad comes out, and yes, keto is a fad right now because of how it's being promoted, meaning like it's a fad to me when it's being considered an all for everyone. So that means that this diet is promoted by, unfortunately, a lot of good functional medicine doctors and practitioners saying, okay, everyone should be on a keto-based diet. You know, the problem with this is that in medical school, you're just not taught about different types of people and different types of physiology. You're not taught about elite athletes. You're not taught about people who exercise a lot in general. You're not taught about females and female-based hormonal systems in balance that has to do with thyroid, estrogen, progesterone, which we will certainly talk about today. And you're not taught about the ectomorph, mesomorph, and endomorph body types. So whenever you're not taught about those things, you simply don't have a basis for recommendations. You're taught that, okay, all humans have a heart, lungs, kidneys, adrenal, intestines. So, with that, you just say, okay, well, every human's the same. Every human burns body fat. Every human can oxidate or use ketones. And all of these things are true, but not to all the same degree. So we know that some people a keto-based diet works better for, specifically for men, let's say ages 25 to 55. Not as much for females, not as much for athletes, not as much for those people who exercise quite a bit. And so, and females, if I didn't mention that already. So here's why. There are a few different things that can go wrong with your physiology if you're not watching. So again, my job is to educate. And if people get offended by this because they're saying, no, the keto diet can save the entire world, well, I would say, look into that. Why are you so adamant that this is what everyone needs to do? Because there's research on both sides. And when there's research on both sides, it doesn't mean that either side is wrong. That's the problem I have, I think, is that, we get in these camps and then we just battle back and forth when the truth is that usually both sides are right. But they're right in certain instances. And we're going to talk about those instances today of when a low carb or keto-based diet might not be appropriate. So the first one is this, is that you never really know unless you're lab testing. And that's the issue, is that when someone says to me, oh, well, it is good or, oh, it is bad, I say, okay, well, how do you know that? Like, oh, well, I just feel that way. Okay, well, if you're feeling great on a keto-based diet, it could be because your cortisol levels are higher, your norepinephrine levels are higher, or your dopamine levels are higher because of caffeine that you're using, because of you're putting your body in a more fight or flight or stress-based situation. So you can't really tell me, you can't just go by on how you feel. That's not the important barometer here, okay? And even with weight loss, sure, that is great and it will happen initially. And don't tell me how you feel for the first 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. Tell me how you feel 6 months later, because it might be different. But the problem is you're setting yourself up after that. So if you're going to go on a really low-carb diet and you plan on maintaining that for, let's say, indefinitely, that means that ongoing, please do test your labs 3 to 4 months after going on that specific diet, keeping everything the same the morning of that lab and day before that lab as well. Because I want you to look at your triglycerides. And I'll link up. I use a lab called Life Extension. I don't sell that on my website, but I do link to it. So if you go to stephencabral.com/store and you go on the anti-aging tab, you'll see the lab test that I recommend for men and for women to have their blood work done every 6 months to 12 months, no later than every 12 months. And I run it through this company. The reason is if I wanted to run all these things through my own health insurance, it would actually cost more. And that's because health insurance doesn't test for a lot of these other different parameters. So anyway, you can check it out, see if it's right for you. Again, I'm not promoted in any way. It's just a simple way to look at what you need to have run on your blood work, and it's what I recommend to people in my practice. All right. So one thing you want to look at is your triglycerides. Now, triglycerides are a way of looking at energy production in the body. They're also a way of looking at how your fats are being handled and also how fructose is being handled. Well, fructose isn't typically an issue on a low-carb diet because your fructose comes from carbs. So that's typically not an issue. But what happens is on a lot of these higher fat diets, meaning eating like almond butters, nuts, animal meats, or oils, it can also raise triglycerides in certain people. Are you one of those people? I don't know. Why don't we lab test? That's the whole point. So when we look at that, we say, what do your triglycerides look like? Are they elevated? And people will try to beat around the bush, say, oh, well, that's not an important parameter, just like the next one I'm going to talk about. But it is. Because higher triglyceride levels have consistently been shown to also increase heart disease, heart attacks, and stroke. So I'm not messing around with that for myself, my family, or anyone I care for in my practice, and I certainly don't want you to be liable to those same things as well. So simply check that out. And the truth is that now, for the normal blood work, they're going to tell you, well, you have to keep your triglycerides below 150 milligrams per deciliter. And sure, that's great. But healthy humans, it's below 100 milligrams per deciliter. So again, there's optimal. Optimal is honestly right around 75 milligrams per deciliter. Okay? Definitely below 100. Within range is below 150 milligrams per deciliter. My triglycerides on my blood work, and I'm about to just have it done this Tuesday, wherever above or even close to 150 milligrams per deciliter, I would seriously look at my nutrition. And I'd be like, okay, well, what am I doing differently? What's changed since the last time I had my lab work run? And certainly what's been different over the last month. And I would get that down. So your triglyceride to HDL should definitely be lower than a 4-to-1 ratio. And again, you'll find all of this on your blood work as well. But I like that lower. I like it. I can't say a 1-to-1, but certainly a 2-to-1 would be really what I'm looking for in terms of triglycerides to HDL. That means keep it really simple, if your triglycerides are 150 and your HDL is 75, well, then you're in a 2-to-1. Most likely, this is what it's going to look like. Healthy triglycerides are going to be somewhere around, let's say, 75 to 100, and healthy HDL is going to be definitely above 50, ideally somewhere in the 60s. For men, maybe even a little bit higher, but again, I'm going to make HDL a different day's topic because if you get too high, you have to start to question your body, why are you producing so much of this antioxidant-based cholesterol? So when you look at high-density lipoproteins, or HDL, we're looking at a protective form of cholesterol to shuttle out some oxidized-based cholesterol. And you have to say, well, we don't want it too high because that means there could be something going on with the brain or other endothelial tissue. But anyway, what I'm looking for is like really close to a 2-to-1 or less, meaning like triglycerides somewhere 75 to 100, HDL somewhere like 50 to 75. Okay, let's move on to the next one, and that's cholesterol. So if your cholesterol is high, because you're eating a low-carb but higher fat diet or higher animal protein-based diet. And again, you can argue, well, animal-based protein doesn't raise cholesterol, it's processed food. Well, again, okay, I can believe you for a lot of people, but you have to test that. You really do. You can't just believe what you read online or the internet. And I have a lot of different podcasts coming out soon. One on adrenal fatigue, that there's one guy in particular who's doing a real disservice to the adrenal fatigue and chronic fatigue-based community. And I lived that. I was a part of that. I still am a part of that. You never really... Because of what it showed me in terms of my psychology, my body, you never leave that. Although I certainly no longer have chronic fatigue. I certainly no longer have Addison's disease or fibromyalgia or any of these things that go along with it. It's a part of me because I know what it was like to suffer from that. And I see this guy advertise it on Facebook and Instagram, and I say, wow, I know he's trying to do good, but he's doing a great disservice to his community because that is not how you heal adrenal fatigue. So I'll talk about that in the future. But cholesterol, this is a big one with the low-carb, keto-based community. you have to lab test because there's a lot of people right now and their LDL goes through the roof. That means they're low density lipoprotein. And you can say like, oh, well, it's different because of particle size. No, like you have to look at overall LDL as well. You don't want that through the roof, and you don't want overall cholesterol. So I really don't want cholesterol over 200, 225. I just don't. I want all the hormones optimized. So I can say, yeah, I can get behind you if your cholesterol is 160 to 200, definitely not over 220. And why not over 220, 225? Well, maybe you do have a little higher HDL, but I certainly don't want your LDL over 100, over 110, or definitely not over 130. So again, look at your blood work, listen to today's podcast, and realize that a keto low-carb diet might be serving you, but it may not. And again, how do you know? Well, you simply lab test. And I know I'm doing like a big promotion for lab testing right now, but you can have your functional medicine doctor. You can have your PCP. Here's what I'm going to do. Make it really easy. Just go to stephencabral.com/552 today. And when you do, I will link not to my website, but I will link directly to the life extension based lab test. But you don't even have to use them. You can use any one you want because I'm not being paid to promote their lab test. But what I'm saying is if you go to their website and you print out the sample report, then you could take that to your PCP and say, can you run all of these labs? And if they can, great. And then you get them all covered, or as best you can, covered by health insurance. So that's that. And again, my wife, my family, everyone obviously uses me as their doctor. But the issue is, I said, okay, well, we're paying all this money in health insurance, which is insane, because we just have to have it because of catastrophic-based anomaly, any of those things that might occur. So I said to my wife, let's just find you a PCP and let's have them just run your blood work once a year, and that's it. So she went, and it was like $600-something for all the things that I wanted to run, when she could have done it through life extension for like $269. It was crazy. So I said, okay, well, I guess that's it. I guess you'll never be, we'll never be going to your traditional MD or PCP again. And again, for most people, I'm saying you shouldn't do that because you might not, be married to or have a family functional medicine doctor or family naturopathic doctor. But so of course, in my ultimate world philosophy, it'd be great to have an MD and it'd be great to have a ND, or just, again, a holistic practitioner. It doesn't have to be a naturopathic doctor. I'm not promoting that in general, but I would like you to have a really good functional medicine doctor with world views about Ayurveda, about traditional Chinese medicine, about, all the different forms of natural healing. It could be a chiropractor, it could be a really good acupuncturist, or, a health coach who just knows about all of these different things. Okay, so I was on cholesterol, obviously got a little sidetracked there. I'm going to pick it back up, but here's the thing. If your cholesterol is high and your hemoglobin A1C or your glucose levels are high, and again, this still can happen on a keto-based diet. I know it's strange, but it can happen. That's why you have to have it tested. So you just want to make sure that your glucose levels, your fasting glucose, and again, you'll have this done with your blood work, is somewhere around 70 to 90 milligrams per deciliter. If that's what it is, you can use a glucometer. I've talked about this before many times in the Cabral concept. You're fine, because what's happening is those glucose molecules aren't going to be able to attach them to the cholesterol molecules, because if they do attach themselves to a cholesterol-based molecule, well, it's going to be harder to process by your liver. It's going to be more likely to become oxidized and also create oxidation-based damage in the endothelial tissue of your arteries, creating then potential for heart attacks, inflammation, cholesterol buildup, those specific types of things, plaque. Okay. And your hemoglobin A1C, that should be a 5.6 or under. Okay. So when you're looking at your hemoglobin A1C, it's kind of we call it a snapshot in time of what your glucose has looked like over the last 90 to 120 days. That will show you. So check that out, because again, if you're on a high cholesterol bearing diet that is hurting your actual cholesterol levels and you have high glucose, that is a recipe for disaster. Okay. Number 3, we're going to pick it back up. Inflammation. Okay. So some people on a lower carb diet, maybe keto-based diet, do better. They actually reduce inflammation. They show, like interleukin 18, they show the actual markers. I'm not going to go through all that today because I know that I'll bore a lot of people to death, but you can simply do the research. People ask, like, what research study are you quoting? Simply type into Google or PubMed or Google Scholar or anything you'd like, and it will be a whirlwind of, a spiral. Again, don't take any one thing for granted. Take everything with a grain of salt, but you'll be able to see all of these research articles. I'm happy to quote them for you, but you can do that research on your own as well. My job is to get you started, is to show you that there's two sides to every story. Well, some people on a keto or low-carb diet, it actually increases inflammation. It does, and it can increase CRP. And when you increase CRP or homocysteine, these are easy markers to look at on a blood test. They will show you that you are increased risk now for some type of heart attack, stroke, or other inflammatory-based issues. This could even be skin issues. So really, really important to look at. CRP, in my opinion, should always be below 1. It shows acute-based inflammation. It's not specific, but it does show acute-based inflammation. Some people don't do well with removing all carbs from their diet because it does put them more into that stress-based mode. That doesn't happen to everyone, but for some people. And again, that's number 3. So check that out. Okay. Number 4 is this. It is the actual lowering of thyroid function in both men and women. Now, who do I see it affect the most? Well, I definitely see it affect women the most. It doesn't mean, so 9 out of 10 guys will probably be totally fine, maybe 19 out of 20. But for women, and a lot of women, going on these low-carb diets initially can be totally fine, which is also why we do it. Initially, fine. 21 days, up to 12 weeks, okay. But then after that, we see a lot of women. That's why I say go on it if you'd like, but after 3 to 4 months, that's when, consistently, that's when it tests your blood work. And here's why. A lot of women go into more of a survival-based mode, okay? Higher HPA axis dysfunction. So higher hypothalamus pituitary adrenal-based fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system mode, go, go, go mode. And what it then happens is it starts to lower T4 to T3 conversion, an actual T3 uptake, and then sometimes, worst case scenario, T3, activated T3 can become reverse T3, which is unusable essentially. And what happens then as well is there is a greater production, so a turning on of the thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. So when you run your blood work, and again, I always recommend a more in-depth thyroid panel. We'll link up the in-depth thyroid panel right now for women. So, and men, if you're dealing with weight loss issues, we provide the absolute best weight loss test, in my opinion, in the history of man. And again, it's not our lab, so we don't own any of these labs. We are not affiliated necessarily with these labs, except that we choose the best of the best. In my practice, we say, there's only so much time in the world and in the day that you have. All we do is pick out, here's the best test for this, here's the best test for this, here's the best supplement for this, here's the best food for this. That's all we do. We try to make your life easy. My life is supposed to be the complicated part of figuring out what everything is. That's my job. Your job is not to figure all these things out. That's my job. Your job is to implement, check your results, recalibrate as necessary. That's it. And that's how you get results. That's the bottom line. Okay. But here's the thing. TSH should be between 0.5 and about 2 or 2.5. When it is out of that range, 3 is not normal, 3.5 is not normal, 5 is definitely not normal. Just because your lab says it can go up to 5 for TSH, that's not normal. That is a dysfunctioning thyroid. So it's a dysfunctioning conversion of TSH to T4 or T4 to T3 or reverse T3. You don't need to know what all that means. Just check your TSH for now. It's a good barometer. Again, if you have a 1 for a TSH, everything's probably okay, but you still, again, an in-depth thyroid would be better to look at iodine and selenium, all the things that help your thyroid run properly. And the comprehensive thyroid actually shows you, okay, what about bromides? What about cadmium? What about arsenic? All these things can affect your thyroid as well. Really great test. You could also run a hair tissue mineral analysis along with this, which would show your mercury levels, aluminum, all those great things. All right, really great here. Okay, so last tip today on how a low-carb or a keto-based diet can harm you or might not be great in the long term is mood. So there's a lot of people right now, especially that ectomorphic type or that athlete-based type, and they've been told to use, or again, female hormone, any one of those, been told to use a low-carb keto-based diet. Well, what these people don't understand, and again, not their fault at all, not anyone's fault who's listening to this, is that carbohydrates help improve mood. Now again, some people don't have to deal with this as much as others, but the ectomorph, the athlete, the female hormone imbalance type, they need carbohydrates. They do need carbohydrates. Make no mistake about that. To cut cortisol levels. Okay? So if you're an athlete and you're pushing a really hard workout, all right, you're upping cortisol. You're upping stress hormone. You're upping that fight or flight. If you're an ectomorph, you're already in that. You are sympathetic nervous system dominant. If you're a female, low on carbs as well. You're putting your body in a survival-based state, especially females, I would say, during reproductive years as well. So here's the thing. If we don't get enough carbs, or at least a refeeding meal, maybe at night or whatever it might be like, because there's cyclic-based low carb and cyclic-based keto-based diets. There's a lot to get into, and I'll talk about all this in the future. But what happens is this, is your body gets moody for a reason. Like, there's a legitimate reason about that. It could be low blood sugar. Yes, that's part of it. And then there will be the keto and low carb people saying, well, you're just not doing it right. You're not getting enough exogenous or endogenous ketone production. And I would say maybe that's true. But maybe some people aren't as adapted, meaning their body doesn't function as well on a low carb or keto-based diet. And there's a lot of people out there. I mean, there legitimately is, because their body as an athlete can't beta oxidize fat as quickly as they need to for fuel. And that same goes with that ectomorphic body type. This is really important to look at. Different people have different physiology. So yes, they have the same physiological systems, but those systems function differently. And if you've never heard about fast and slow oxidation, well, you need to look at that. And if you've never seen how the human body works in terms of maximal output in certain stress-based situations, such as exercise, you need to understand that the body does better with carbohydrates in those specific circumstances. So I do really beg of you to look at the total picture. Again, I stand nothing to gain by going against keto or low carb or not, but I want you to be as healthy as a human as possible. And so that's why I bring this to you. So a hair tissue mineral analysis will also show you if you're in that high stress response stage, or if you're good, or if you're becoming depleted. Very, very simple test, inexpensive, a great place to start as well. And if you want a little bit more in-depth one, you can run the adrenal and hormone panel. Again, all of this is taken care of if you run that weight loss or weight maintenance-based lab test. It shows you adrenal, it shows you thyroid, it shows you hemoglobin A1C. Really remarkable test. Can't recommend that enough. I'll link all those up today in the show notes. And remember, if you have someone, if you have a friend, family member, coworker, anyone that you care about, they're on a low carb diet, they're on a keto-based diet, please just forward this show to them. I don't think I'm putting it down in any way. I'm not. What I'm saying is there's two sides to every story, and it might be great for you, but here's what I want for you. I want you to know for sure. And how do you know for sure? Well, your lab test, but you'll also start to look at your symptoms, and the symptoms are what I spoke about today. So thank you, everyone, for tuning into another Cabral Concept. Really enjoyed bringing today's show to you, and can't wait to bring you tomorrow's show as well. Stay tuned. Thank you for just tuning into the Cabral Concept. It's hard to believe, but it's already the month of August. This means that the summer will soon be over and we'll be getting back into our fall routine, which for the most of us means cleaning up our nutrition and getting back into a healthy regimen. This is why during the month of August 2017, I want to offer you a free bottle of my daily probiotic support with any 21-day Dr. Cabral Detox package. This means you'll get all the wellness benefits associated by doing the Dr. Cabral Detox, and if you're looking to lose weight, you can lose up to 15 pounds in just 21 days. Plus, I'm going to send you out the 60-capsule bottle of my dairy-free, low-histamine 50 billion CFU daily probiotic support. This is the exact same one I use every day as part of my Dr. Cabral daily protocol. I feel so strongly that the 21-day Dr. Cabral Detox is the first place most people should start that I'm offering $30 off the retail price and another $39.95 in savings with the daily probiotic support bonus offer. This is an almost $70 in savings for the highest quality, non-GMO, third-party tested functional medicine nutritional supplements on the market. To take advantage of this limited time offer, simply go to stephencabral.com/store for details.